You know, amongst Australian Aboriginals, there's a tradition of travelling across the country to visit sacred sites, relatives and friends, to collect wild food and to follow stories. And it's very much in that vein that I've come here to Australia to go walkabout.
The great thing about the term walkabout is that you can use it to describe almost any sort of journey. So that's just what I'm doing in this series, exploring parts of Australia I've never been to before. And today, I'm in Queensland. People are always asking me whether I've ever met the bush tucker man. Les Hiddins presented a series of hugely popular television series exploring bush foods and gathering information from Australian Aboriginals. He may come from the other side of the world, but he and I have so much in common. Now we finally get the chance to work together as Les and I take a road trip across his home state of Queensland. It's an opportunity to look at how varied the landscape here is, learn about the tucker on offer and delve into the history of this part of Australia. We're starting in the rainforest of the Daintree National Park. But first, there's something we've got to get out of the way.
What's the worst thing you've eaten, eh?
I was going to say the same thing.
Is that right?
Well, I think the Brussels sprout first. I can't stand Brussels sprout. What about you? What's your worst thing?
Oh, there's been a few. Oh, I reckon probably it's a thing called common name is cheese fruit tree or
Morinda.
Yeah, Morinda. I call it the dog's vomit tree. I'll see if I can get you one.
Yeah, I figured that you might try and get me to eat that one. Morinda citriflorea.
Yeah, you won't get it here. It's more coastal
on the
sort
coast.
of thing. Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story once. I did a sequence on, you know, the great big long mangrove worm.
Oh yeah, I've eaten those.
Yeah,
nice.
they're
I
good.
like them,
They're good. And they're just like oysters, you know. They're terrific.
Yeah, they got like that crab pate taste.
Yeah.
In fact, there are two, aren't they? There's one that's got a little like chili hint to it.
That's right. But I was eating this and it was shown on TV, etc., etc. And I was going up in Cape York there, and the Aboriginal tracker over a place called Laura up in Cape York, he said to me, and he's an inland fella, and him and his wife are inland Aboriginals, you know. And he's saying to me, you know that worm you've been eating on TV? And I said, yeah. He said, we've been watching that, eh? And I said, oh yeah, good. He said, you know, my wife, she just about vomit that.
Well, it's nice to know we're off to the right start. Now it's time to set up camp. One of the great things about travelling by car is you can travel with a bedroll, as they call them in Australia, swags. The traditional way of setting those up is like this, under a tarp of some sort if there's a chance of rain, and particularly where there are insects like mosquitoes and sandflies. What you need is a net with a fine weave like this one, and that will keep out the small creatures like sandflies. That's very important. They can really ruin a trip. Sadly, people coming here on holiday very often will rent this sort of equipment but end up with a net like this, which is a real cheap one. These are still very commonly found here. They've got a very open weave, and these actually catch more insects than they keep out. You can wake up in the morning being bitten to pieces with all the little creatures that bit you still trapped inside the net. Not a nice experience. Always clear the ground where you're going to put up your swag. Leaf litter can be a place where you find scorpions, ants that can bite, and other nasties. For this swag, I'm going to need 2 trees, about that distance apart. That'll be perfect. You can use poles, but trees do the job admirably well. Just gonna tie that up there. I like to tie that with a adjustable knot. Same again at this end, little adjustable knot. Enables me to get the tension right, something like that. Now what I like about this is the tightness of the mesh. Let me show you. You can hardly see through it. I could set it like that and put a big tarp over the top, which would be ideal, but it does actually come with its own tarp. Of course, the great advantage of a swag is it comes with all your bedding. You've got your mattress, sheets, a sleeping bag or blanket, and even a pillow, all ready and comfortable, which, frankly, at the end of a long, hard day's driving, is brilliant. I like to take the first chance I can to explore, and there's no one who knows this part of Australia better than Les. Within minutes, he's found something for us to eat. Well, I know what this one is, because it's very unmistakable. I've seen it in the books here, in books you've done, and I know that's the blue condom.
Yep.
But I've never used one, so what do you do with this?
Okay, well, it's the flesh on the outside of the stone. The stone's inside, and I'll show you one of them in a minute. It's a very pitted stone, so just have a nibble on the outside flesh there.
Oh, it's a big stone.
Big stone. And you've got the green, sort of dry sort of flesh there, which is a bit sour.
It tastes like hawthorn berries from the UK.
Oh, does it? Oh, I haven't had them. The purple fruit here, the colour, always reminds me of cassowaries. And they love these things. They eat them all the time, you know. But that stone's very interesting, and I'll tell you why. There you go. That's what the stone's like when it's all finished.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all sort of pitted and all very, very regular. Very regular.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, look at that, stunning.
Yeah, and you can make terrific necklaces and all that sort of thing out of them. They're very, very ornamental.
It's really lovely.
Yeah, and they're typical of rainforest stuff, particularly around this part of the world.
Really interesting.
There's real beauty here, but much of it is dangerous, like this, called simply and accurately the giant stinging tree.
The rainforest has got a whole host of things you've got to be a bit careful of in it, and this is a real classic. This tree with these big heart-shaped leaves is one you wouldn't use for toilet paper. It's got this fruit on it that looks like raspberry, and I'm told it's edible. I've never actually eaten one. I'm a bit ginger in the way I handle it. I'm going to try it. It's just very watery. I wouldn't bother eating it. It's not no real flavour to it. And this is a tree that I haven't had a great deal of dealings with. But you know a lot about this, don't you, Les? So.
Yeah, this you know, this has got an awesome reputation, this tree. It's called a giant stinging tree, and all you've got to do is touch those leaves, whether they're green or dead like those ones over there. And they've got these little fine hairs on the surface which go into your skin, and this will continue to sting not just for a day or 2 days, up to 6 months. Right?
And it can sting through a rubber glove, can't it?
Yeah, because what's going on is that the hairs are penetrating, well, initially your skin, of course, and the hairs seem to be hollow, which is allowing, yeah, be careful of it, which is allowing the outside air temperature to get into your nervous system, and so therefore every time something's hot, it reacts to, something's warm, it reacts to it, etc., etc. And the only way to really provide some sort of relief is to people shave the skin where it's been affected, and then cover that shaved area with something that's sort of latex based, some ointment or cream, or there's some plants around here that you can actually get the sap of and put on the top, and that stops that outside air temperature getting into your nervous system, which of course you know, tones it all down. But it's a problem you're going to have to learn to live with for several months.
There are also signs of the animals of this rainforest. This is a nest, and you'd be forgiven for thinking it belongs to T-Rex.
Now, Ray, just have a look at this. What do you reckon that is?
Well, that I mean, I'm not familiar with your bird life here, but if I saw this in other bits of rainforest, I'd think megapode's nest.
You're almost right, because what it is a scrub hen, and they're a little bird about as big as a chook, you know. And they come around the joint and they just scratch it up all the time, like that, and just build it up.
I mean, that's massive for a small bird, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, that's astonishing.
Yeah.
These are communal nests, reused year after year. But the incredible thing is how they provide the perfect environment for the scrub hen eggs.
The bird's got a sort of like a thermostat in their beak, and they plug that into the ground here and whack it in there, and they can tell what the temperature is because the eggs are sort of buried down below, and they keep it around about 33 degrees, and if it's too hot they scratch some dirt off, and if it's not hot enough they scratch more on the top, that sort of thing, you know.
It's incredible, isn't it? Because conservationists sometimes, when they try to incubate eggs like this, struggle to get the conditions just right.
Right.
And the birds, you know, by evolutionary process, have just learned this method, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. But of course this is part of your bush tucker cycle too, you know, because the eggs, you know, Aboriginal people used to go for the eggs because the birds were a bit hard to get. They'd go for the birds if they could get them too, but once those birds get out in scrub country there, a bit hard to follow them up. So what they'd be looking for is the sort of the tunnels, the chutes that the birds used to dig and drop the eggs in. And they'd feel that by shoving their spears in the ground, right, and where it went down further, they'd say, loose ground, there's something down here. They'd shove it all the way down, 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 pull it out. If it was wet on the end, they knew there were eggs down there, and they'd dig it up.
Yeah.
Today, scrub hens and their close relatives, these scrub turkeys, are protected, as are their eggs. Even in a country the size of Australia, wildlife and habitats are under threat. However, there are still plenty of wonderful wild places for us to explore, like Bloomfield Falls. I want to know more about Les's past. I know he studied bush tucker when he was in the army, but I want to know how he started going out into the bush.
Come and have a look at this, mate. This is absolutely unreal.
Did you grow up in Queensland, Les?
Yeah, I did. And my introduction to the bush actually was via my father, who used to work for what we called the PMG in those days, the telecoms. And he'd go around all the old properties and that sort of thing up here, fixing up the telephones in the cattle stations. And quite often, if it was school holidays, I'd go with him. You know, so that's how I got around the place, and that was my introduction to the bush as well.
And then when you were doing your work with the army, that involved going to lots of Aboriginal communities.
Well, it did, in so much as I moved later on from infantry across to Army Aviation, rotary wing, and I used to fly around all these areas up here, Cape York, the Gulf, and that sort of thing, and called into a lot of those communities at various times, be it for exercise and that gradually introduced me into cataloguing bush tucker, because you fly across this country, it's so vast, as you're finding out, and as you're well aware, it's so vast, you've got to ask yourself the question when you're in a helicopter with one engine, what would happen if, you know, and how would I get on? And that's what kicked it all off.
Les's chosen occupation was greeted with some scepticism by his colleagues.
Now, I have it on very good authority that when you started doing all this, nobody ever saw you on barracks after that. That everyone used to say you'd just gone fishing. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Little did they know, you know, back in those days, I wasn't even carrying a fishing line, you know, but the accusation was there, you know, and understandable too. But yeah, they all thought that, how's the fishing trip going? I think there was a little bit of envy around the place.
Yeah.
You know? But it was a terrific job, and I worked very hard. That went on for 10 years like that, and covering hundreds of thousands of kilometres in an army vehicle by myself in very, very remote areas.
Yeah. And you had some of these plants you had tested, didn't you, in laboratories as well? You did comparative trials with soldiers surviving, some using plant foods and some using meat, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. And it was really interesting. We're doing, I think, one particular test we did on a whole bunch of my mates, all pilots. We had about 8 of them, and we knew that the candle nut, which you get in the rainforest, also caused diarrhea if you ate too many. So we wanted to find out how many you had to eat before you got diarrhea. So we gave each pilot 1 nut. You can have 2 nuts, you can have 3 nuts. And thanks to Lieutenant Andy Hasty, we know it's 8 nuts.
That's fantastic.
It's very easy being here with Les, partly because we actually met for the first time a year ago. I was filming for my wild food series, where we got on so well it inspired me to save the footage and return for a whole series in Australia. The depth of his knowledge was self-evident as soon as Les started talking.
The local Aboriginal people come down here all the time. They come down here to fish and to hunt and that sort of thing. And you see them driving down here and they're walking through here and camping in the bush there, and they paddle through this stuff here and they go for the water lilies and the lotus lilies and of course the magpie geese as well, you know. So there's a lot around, and what's in the water, of course, you've got the mobile foods there, whether it's fish or eels, or sometimes you get a thing called file snake as well, which you can eat as well.
We took a trip along the Roper River to find food to eat that evening. I could tell instantly that here was someone driven by the same things as myself.
Okay, here we go. There. It's a K-Rada here. It's part of our native grape situation, you know. But you've got to watch them because they're sort of classified as 1 beer grapes, 2 beer grapes, 3. That means because they burn the back of the throat, how many beers you've got to have afterwards, okay? So anyway, have a nibble on that and see what you reckon.
That one. It's a funny shape, isn't it?
Yeah, flattish, and you'll find probably about 3 seeds inside.
Oh, that's nice.
It's not bad, is it? Yeah.
That's great, mate.
Yeah.
2 seeds.
2 seeds.
Big seeds.
Yeah.
You're right, they do burn the throat a little bit, don't they?
Yeah.
Not much. Tastes real grape-like. Good name.
These ones here, the burning will be less because they've got so much moisture in them. But the ones that grow on the dry ground, because the roots are in the water in this one, the ones that grow on dry ground will be, you know, a bit more intense. But they're probably a 2 beer grape.
No, I reckon that's a 4 beer grape, definitely.
Definitely.
They're really tasty.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they?
Wherever you go in northern Australia, Les knows just the place for great tucker, and this was no exception.
Well, this is exactly the sort of place that you look for something like this for yabbies.
For the overhanging vegetation.
Yeah, they like it in the, soft sandy banks like here.
Yeah.
So we'd put this probably in this pot here, tie it off. Eat all sorts of things, bits of meat, bits of vegetable, even potato, would you believe?
As the same, we've got a problem with an invading species, an American one.
Oh yeah.
And that destroys our native ones. So, yeah, so hopefully people will go out and catch the American ones.
Yeah, I reckon.
That would be good.
Bush food may not always be the most convenient to find, but I never tire of gathering my own food. It's such a great feeling eating something you've collected only minutes before.
Yeah. The best place to look is around the vegetation stuff. Yeah. Right here.
Yeah. We get these in the UK as well.
Ah, got one.
You got one?
Yeah. Here we go. Little one.
Little one.
Little one, yeah. You know, once you find one, you get a whole lot of them. Yeah. Leave that one too small. They're very gregarious, I think. They like each other. Lots. Oh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, we used to, of course, get, well, we still do get some freshwater mussels, but we don't have the habitat like this so often now because all our waterways have more or less been tidied up, cleaned up.
Yeah.
And because of fertilisers running off the land, the vegetation's changed.
Well, we're tidying this up too.
Yeah. Well, someone's got to.
Depends whether you want to eat or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Who better to find bush tucker with than the bush tucker man? There's so much for us to learn from each other.
Les, do you have a use for these?
What is it? No, what are they?
This is a type of fungus. We have something very similar to this growing in Britain, which is in the genus Daldinia, and they have concentric rings inside. You see that?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is really useful. You can use this for fire lighting. If you drop sparks on this, it'll glow like a charcoal briquette.
Is that right?
Let's have a look. I've got that spark thing here. You can keep insects away as well. You can even cook on them.
Well, that's fascinating. That's new to me. I've never heard of that before. You learn something every day, don't
Amazing. Yeah, well, that's the fun thing about the subject we both share is
you? It
that
goes on like that.
the more you learn, the more you realise you don't
you
know.
never stop.
Oh yes, look.
Ah, look at that.
They're size, aren't they?
That's a good muscle.
That's a good one, that one.
Good meat in there.
Yeah, quite oyster-like these. They're looking good. I'll tell you what, Les, one of the things I wanted to ask you about were these.
Mm-hmm.
These maps that you
snack
produced.
maps. Snack maps.
Was this your idea?
Yeah, well, actually, it was sort of my idea. I was giving a lecture in Army office in Canberra and thinking about doing wall posters, and the bloke who was in charge of the Army Survey Corps at the time come up to me and said, why don't you put your information on the back of my maps? I thought, what a great idea.
Fantastic.
And that's how it happened, you know.
Yeah, because the back of a map's normal, just white.
Yeah, and what I've done about 700 of these now. And if you look at this map, this is Roper, and that's Roper River there, of course. It's got a lot of coastal area in it, see?
Yep.
Now, soldiers are terrific at cutting up maps, right? And they just take that section with them. So if you turn it over, you know, you'll find that the information there is relevant to that sort of coastal area type thing.
That's clever.
Yeah. There's the mussels there we're going to be eating here tonight.
Beautiful. That looks good. It's good down, isn't it?
Yeah, it comes at the right price too.
Hey, you can't have it all.
How about that one?
That is great.
Good on you.
Brilliant.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's good, isn't it?
The only thing I don't like in that is the biscuit. It doesn't compare, does it? To
No,
the
it
food?
doesn't. I'll leave this one.
God, cheers. Very good.
People pay for this sort of thing, you know.
Amazing. Fantastic food.
We got it on the back doorstep here.
Wow.
What a great meal. And a year later, if anything, we're getting on better than ever.
Stunning, isn't it? Pretty good. Pretty good.
Liz, this is a massive green ant's nest here. I've eaten these before, and I know the Aboriginals use it as a medicine, don't they?
Yeah.
But I've never seen what they actually do with it.
Okay, well, as you can see, what they've done is got all the leaves and moulded them together and made a bit of a sort of a nest or a house out of it. It's all this sort of green leaves, and they've moulded them together. Some have died off and that sort of thing. But you can see that it's still active because the ants are on the outside here walking around the place. They know that we're here.
They can see
They
that.
can sense our presence here, and they're very, very protective of their nest, because inside there'll be a queen ant that they're going to protect no matter what. And this is one of those things that it fits into one of the three categories that I reckon: bush foods, bush medicine, and bush technique. This here is bush medicine, because you crush it up, or you try and get the larvae from inside and boil that up and stew it up, and it's a bit like a lemon drink, a hot lemon drink. Cures your sinuses and all that sort of thing. So what we'll do is we'll open this up in a minute, and of course once we do that, they'll swarm everywhere. They'll be over, you know, you and I, etc., etc. And they're biting. They're not injecting. They're just biting. They're
nippers.
A pincer, little nipper thing. And there'll be, I'd reckon there'll be thousands of them in there. But we'll see when we start to open it up.
Go for it.
Righto. You better come in close. Okay, here we go. Look at them in there. Look at it all. And there's the white larvae that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay? Now they're biting me like crazy at the moment. Have a go at that.
Yeah.
Okay? Right.
Oh, you have the formic acid they're giving off.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Now get that white larvae and just pinch it together like that.
Yeah.
Okay? And just whack that in your mouth. Very astringent, isn't it?
Very astringent, and the lemon taste from the ants themselves, very strong.
And goes straight up here.
Now, I read somewhere that scientists over here in Australia are studying these ants because they don't get bacterial infections.
Is
They've
that
got
right?
some means of protecting themselves, and that could be something that maybe medicine can use.
Yep.
Really, really exciting.
Les has been championing the knowledge of the Australian Aboriginal for years, but it's only recently that the rest of the world has begun to catch on to just how valuable this knowledge may be. back to camp and time for a brew, I reckon.
I love these trees with amazing buttresses like that. Quite incredible. Good sound, isn't it? Of course, buttresses can also be quite useful, and I noticed there's one here with a natural hook in it, and on the other side there's this vertical branch close to this buttress. What it means that is if I put this stick across there, I've got a perfect bar to suspend my billy can from. And as long as I keep the fire small so that I don't scorch the tree in any way, this will be a perfect place to keep my brew fire burning. Brand new billy can. I think it's about time it lost its virginity. Now that the fire's dying down a little bit, I want to lower the billy can and arrange it so that I can easily take it off. So I've just made a very simple pot hanger. I'll just put that on there and hang that over the fire. And then the fire's going to burn down. Just going to be a small fire, just right for brewing the billy. Well, that billy can's already boiling, and that's just 5 minutes. It's a good hot fire. What I've just done is very simple. All I had to do was find a piece of wood that was standing and relatively dry, and then by shaving it finely with the machete, I could ignite it and get this fire going simply and efficiently. Very simple, but a lot of people can't do it, and that skill can be a lifesaver. And the buttresses turn this tree into a perfect fireplace, reflecting all the heat back towards me. Les isn't the only person I've flown halfway around the world to see. This part of Australia is home to someone else I've wanted to meet for a very long time indeed. A real unsung hero of Australia. Sidcar Little was one of the first policemen in Arnhem Land. He arrived in 1946 and spent the best part of 4 years living among the Aboriginals. As a law enforcer, he was one of a kind.
The first thing they said to me, where's your irons, where's your handcuff, your chain? No, I said, I don't need them. Why don't you need them? I said, because I trust you. So they learned to take my word, and they used to refer to me as that man, not using rifle. You're all the same black fella.
That must have been quite unusual in that time, wasn't it? I mean, that wasn't a normal white attitude to...
No, it wasn't. Most of the police used to handcuff and chain them round the neck and also to make so they could walk. Well, I couldn't see the sense in that if they gave the... I took a man's word of honour. They've got a code of honour that's absolutely, well, in many ways it's better than ours. They stand by their code of honour every inch of the way.
It's Sid's attitude that makes him so special to me. He was willing to learn from others and keen to earn respect on their terms, especially from an elder called Marday.
But what about the time when he turned to you and he said, but you can't travel in this country if you haven't got a swag and a mosquito net and a rifle?
That's right. Yeah, he said, I said, I can, but I said it's going to be hard. And I did. I did a short trip, leaving everything behind. I just went out as I am now, with nothing. And
But you didn't take clothes, did you?
No, stark bollocky naked. I had what they call a naga on, a little string around here. And I had that on because I didn't want to get my penis bitten by mosquitoes. And I walked out.
Did you have boots?
No, barefoot. I just wanted to prove that I could do things they could do.
He certainly did. His book Whispering Wind is a catalogue of adventures. Many feature his guide, a man called Underbund.
I swam a river once, and Underbund had my swag on a little raft he built, and he was swimming beside me, at the back of me. And we got out, and I got up on the bank, and I helped him pull up the bank, and we walked up the bank, and under the shade of a big tree, there was a massive big crocodile, and he lay there watching us. And I thought, oh my God. And Underbund said, oh boss, we're lucky. I said, why? What's lucky about that? He said, like he'd been fed. Look, he said, look. And all around him were scraps of meat, bits of legs and things. He must have eaten about 2 or 3 wallaby. Or, well, God knows what it was he ate, but he had a bellyful.
Sid's photos are a priceless record, but they weren't all taken by him.
Some of the rivers up there, not all of them, there's not many of them have got quicksand on the bank. And I went into it and I started to wade ashore and I ran straight into quicksand. And I was down to my waist, bubbling and going away, and I said, Underbund, Pete, Underbund, you know, wait a minute, boss, you've been giving me that camera. I said, what for? You know, I want him photographed. I said, to hell with the photograph. Get me out of here. No, boss, got him photographed first. And he took his time. I'm going bubble, 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 down I'm going into the quicksand. And he says, smile. I said, and he took a photograph and I'm cursing like hell. Then he threw me a rope. And he and a couple of other Aborigines, 3 of them, got off the rope and pulled me out of this quicksand and dragged me up the bank like a muddy fish.
So you must have witnessed all sorts of amazing things when you were there. When you look back on it, what do you think you learned?
I learned to respect other people, regardless of colour, race or creed or religion.
A great attitude, but Sid was no sentimental liberal. He brought many criminals to justice, but he fitted in so well that he was given his own Aboriginal name, Malinma, or Whispering Wind.
And Malinma is it happens at the rising of the sun at dawn, as the first break of sky comes over the horizon. That is called the Malinma. And I used to catch my murderers always at that time of day, early morning, just as the sun was just rising over the horizon, coming up from the earth like that, rising over the horizon.
As far as I'm concerned, the world needs more people like Sid Carr-Little.
Slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning last. Just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy.
If there's one man whose name you can't escape here, it's Captain James Cook. The Queensland coast is littered with references to him and his ship, the Endeavour, because this is where he and his crew faced a disaster that could have ended their voyage altogether.
So, Les, why don't you draw me a map and show what happened here?
Okay. Well, you know Cape Trib over there?
Yep.
That was named by Captain Cook. I'll explain to you why.
Yeah, tell the story.
Okay, there's Cape Trib there, and the coast comes along here and up here a bit. We haven't crossed it yet, but we've got a big river like that called the Bloomfield, okay? And then right up here, and we've got a great big harbour in here, like that, with river system in it and all that sort of thing, and that's where Cooktown is. Now, back in 1770, if we were way out here, something like that, which is way out there on the horizon, that's where what we call Endeavour Reef is today, because Cook had come sailing up here and hit the reef there. So here he is on the other side of the world, stuck on the barrier reef, which goes for, you know, almost 1,000 mile that way and 1,000 mile that way. And what's he got to do? He's got a hole in the side of his boat that big. Fortunately for him, though, it was plugged up with the lump of coral that caused the hole, and it was sort of half securing it. So he got the men out and they're on the pumps and all the rest of it, and they were stuck there for quite some time. The tide was coming in and they managed to get off. He said, right, in tribulation, I'll name that Cape Tribulation. That's exactly what he did. And then he got the longboats out and anchored them off the bow of the Endeavour, and they started rowing north. So they've rowed from there, the Endeavour Reef, or what we call now the Endeavour Reef, all the way, boom, 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 right up here to this big harbour, and they pulled in there. And that's where we're going to go.
Cook was an incredible navigator, and the charts he made during this trip were so accurate they are reputed to have still been in use by the American Navy 170 years later during World War II. This chart shows the Endeavour River, the natural harbour Cook chose to repair his ship. Cook's trip was typical of British exploration of the time, a real voyage of discovery. He had with him men of science, including naturalist Joseph Banks. Even stuck in this bay, facing disaster, these men were still determined to go out collecting, and there was plenty for them to gather.
They worked pretty hard, didn't they?
They were really hard workers.
You look at the plant listing that you've got over there in Kew Gardens, of the plants that they actually listed while they were here, and it's hundreds of them.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Very, very pretty up here, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Stunning.
Top spot. All these mangroves, of course, they've all got bush tucker, mud crabs and things like that, and lots of your shellfish and that sort of thing in there as well.
It's interesting, a lot of people who've got into trouble in Australia have avoided them because of the crocodiles, and yet that's their best feed, is in amongst the mangroves.
Yeah. Now you get to live off the mangrove stuff around here. And in fact, I think Cook and his mates did too, because they traded with the Aboriginals while they were camped here.
I'm not surprised Les is as fascinated by Cook and his crew as I am. Cook's leadership and his determination, not just to survive but to succeed, are qualities we both admire.
Look at the hills there, mate. You know, if you could take away all the boats and everything here, it really hasn't changed that much, I don't think, from when Cook sort of came through here.
In my mind, I'm trying to imagine what it was like on board that ship. And there must have been a nervous time.
I reckon. You know, they had to throw all sorts of things on board to get off that reef. They had to chuck over the cannons and all sorts of stuff. But here they are on the other side of the world, stuck with a big hole in the side of their boat.
Yeah.
Drifting in here.
And it's a long voyage. Fantastic test of leadership, I think, as well.
Yeah. Everyone's got to pull in the same direction. They've all got to salute the same flag at that time.
But of course, you know, you think about how long the voyage had been at that point as well.
Yeah. And there's a bay just down the way here a bit. It's called Weary Bay. He named it for a good reason.
Yeah,
they were getting pretty weary from the rowing, you know.
But the reason we've taken to the water is that we're both familiar with a famous image of the Endeavour as it lay careened on the shore under repair. Les and I are looking for the artist's vantage point.
Now, that painting that depicts the careening of the Endeavour, it must be this hill on that one, isn't it?
Well, that puts the Endeavour down here.
Down there, yeah.
Yeah. I can remember when I was a kid coming up here with my father, and that part there was still the tree in the banks of the Endeavour River here, the tree that the Endeavour ship was tied up to.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that tree, they filled it up with concrete because it was dying and going rotten and everything. Filled it up with concrete and it's up in the museum here now. So I can remember that being on the banks here.
It takes a bit of tracking back and forth, but then suddenly we find we're not just finding the same point of view, we're part of the picture. And there's an even better surprise to come.
Look at that, I can't believe it. There's a boat on its side careened just as the Endeavour was, in about more or less spitting distance.
Yeah. And that's just about exactly where I remember the tree being when I was a kid.
I wonder if they realise.
We were obviously meant to take this trip today. It was during Cook's enforced stay here that a Briton first heard the word kangaroo. The Aboriginal name for this indigenous marsupial is different all across Australia, but this was the first name heard and it stuck. This hill is where Cook came to plot his passage through the reefs, but our journey lies inland, Ahead of us now, 2 days of hard driving. We'll be passing plants that were here when Cook was here. In fact, he fed his pigs on them. These are cycads. They're one of the oldest plant types on the planet. They grow incredibly slowly. Each metre represents 100 years of growth, which means the taller trees here were standing when Cook passed through.
Yeah. I don't know, but I reckon that'll be 4 or 5 metres, a bit hard to tell from here.
Yep. Well, it's what they reckon. So it's a metre every 100 years,
Yep,
isn't it?
a metre every 100 years.
I'll tell you what, I'll use a stick and then get you to pace it out and we'll know.
Stick and tape?
Perfect.
Right, let's do that.
Right, let's have a look. I'll put the top of the stick at the top of the cycad. And I'll put my thumb to the base. Right, so I've turned it 90 degrees. If you pace it out, Les,
Okay.
Yep, I'll tell you when to stop.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Stop.
Okay, you got 500 years roughly there.
Frankie, 500 years, that's old.
500. There you go, roughly.
That's amazing.
All the history standing there. Only trees could talk, eh?
If only. There's so much history here. Even the road we'll be travelling. It follows routes pioneered by the early explorers, men like Ludwig Leichhardt, one of the first explorers to give any thought to the Aboriginals whose land he was crossing.
Tell me about Leichhardt, because he's one of your favourites, isn't he, in terms of the explorers up here?
Yeah, he's one of my favourites.
He used a lot of wild food, didn't he, on his journey?
He tampered in that direction all the time. Every time he'd get into an Aboriginal camp, he wouldn't disturb it that much, but he'd see what they were eating and that sort of thing. Sometimes you'd eat a bit or taste it, and then he'd leave something behind as a present or something like that, a knife or something like that, and then move on. But he was forever, trying this and trying that. In fact, funny story, he got so hungry there at one stage, he actually boiled up his saddlebags and ate them.
Must have been desperate.
Oh, I reckon, yeah.
Leichhardt showed resourcefulness and respect, attributes both Les and I employ in the way we work and travel.
Les, I thought I'd make the tea a little bit more traditional Outback.
Oh, good on you, just for me.
Add a couple of gum leaves to it.
And you got the best ones off the tree too.
That's the tradition, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, as it used to be once upon a time, not so much these days, but
Yeah.
once upon a time that sort of thing happened quite a lot, where gum leaves were chucked in to add a bit more flavour and a bit more character to the brew. But yeah, that's right. That's traditional.
A couple of tea bags in the village. Yeah, and it's quite interesting. In Canada, they do the same, And if you come to it late in the day, it's been boiled and boiled and
Is that
boiled.
right?
It can be black.
Oh dear.
So we can stick a couple of those in.
Works out pretty well.
This is the country Les went to school in. This landscape was his playground. It had a profound influence on him.
It's been a long old drive today.
Oh yeah, well we've covered quite a few clicks, but we're doing it in comfort compared with what they used to do it with. When I was at school, I went to boarding school at a town not far from here, and it catered just for bush kids. And I can remember all the ringers in those days, the stockmen, and we call them ringers back then. I can remember all the ringers in those days. You used to wear a hat just like this one here, and that bash was quite common then. You never see it these days. Or
That's
barely.
the shape of your hat.
That's right, yeah, the shape, that's the bash, yeah. You never see it these days, but it was part of the scene way back then, and it went right back to the Sydney Kidman era and that sort of thing. So it's got quite a heritage to it.
That's amazing. I think it's probably
But it's due to my, growing up in this neck of the woods that I knew about this.
hence the famous, your trademark really, Les.
Well, it is a bit, isn't it? Yeah, it is a bit.
Even with modern equipment and full support, over 700 miles across Queensland is tough going. There are still hours to go, but just up the track, we come across our support crew. Their trailer has shed a wheel. But travelling is all about dealing with the incidents that happen. A short stop for provisions, some exchange of equipment, and tonight I'm ready to provide dinner myself.
It's one of those moments. It's been a very long day, we're all very tired. A lot of driving. Massive country, Australia. Beautiful though, stunning scenery. But despite that, you know, you get fire going, you feel like you're at home, it feels good. And a few minutes later and you've got hot water. Now if I can get this lid to go on the kettle, I can pour some. Be very careful when you're tired, that's when mistakes happen, accidents happen. You have to take extra care at moments like that. I have to say I feel a bit like Captain Cook at the moment because I've done a bit of press ganging. Let me show you. These are my sous chefs, and this is Frank and Nigel from the Daily Mirror, and of course I've got them boiling potatoes, peeling potatoes. What would you expect? Come on, you oblate man, move yourself, move yourself. And in the background there I've got Cassie, she's part of our production team, and she's doing a stalwart job on the vegetables. A bit of teamwork goes a long way.
I do the chopping.
Oi, mine and knife.
The press are only with us for one day. What a day to choose.
My sous chef has prepared the necessary vegetables. I've got celery, carrot, onion. All going in. 2 hot camp ovens. Soften those up. It's very hot by this fire at the moment. Hot to start with, and I'll let it cool off. Sounds good, doesn't it? Due to the rapid nature at which we exchanged equipment and food with the logistic vehicle this afternoon, and we haven't got the lid for the camp ovens, so I'm having to improvise here with a frying pan full of embers to do the browning off of the shepherd's pie. So that should be nice. I'm going to cook that for a little while. Yeah, that looks good. Right, well, help yourselves. I think that's
Grubs
good.
up.
Yeah, grubs up.
Great stuff.
It's,
Well done, Ray.
It's rather improvised, but there you go.
Thank you, mate.
After you, Frank.
Cheers. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Burny bits around the edges. Very good.
Yeah. It's not very bush tucker, is it? But I tell you what, I've saved a few blue quandongs for you if you really want.
Every trip needs good teamwork. It's very late, and Barry and Tim have been slogging away on camera and sound, continuing to film when we should all be eating and resting. It's finally time to call a halt for the day.
Cut. Tell the truth now.
And come and eat.
Today we reach our destination, the reason we've crossed Queensland, the scene of an epic survival story, a story as relevant to survival today as it was when it happened. This is desolate country, the worst place to get stranded. But that's exactly what happened to 6 American airmen during the Second World War. Early on the 2nd of December 1942, the crew of an American bomber called Little Eva got lost returning from their mission. Running out of fuel and wrongly believing they were near home, they started to bail out. The pilot, Norman Crossan, landed near the burning wreck and made his way towards it, where he met up with Staff Sergeant Loy Wilson.
Being here on the ground, it's easy to imagine the drama of that evening. When Crossan and Wilson got here, this was all still burning. Bullets, 50 caliber bullets, were exploding in there. There were other things that greeted them as well. Inside, there were a couple of their crew members dead, and attached to this hatch somewhere was a parachute. One of the men had tried to bail out through here. His parachute had snagged on the fuselage, and his body was still attached to the harness, here, dead.
When no one else joined them, they set off east. They were lucky, but it was still well over a week before they were found. The 4 remaining members of the crew fared far worse. They'd landed a lot further away from the plane.
You've got to put yourself in their situation. They've just parachuted down into this wilderness, and in every direction it looks identical. Now they've got to make an important decision. Do they head to where they think the plane crash is, or do they move in a different direction?
They chose to walk north from the aircraft, unwittingly away from the chance of rescue. They had little or no survival training or knowledge of the local plants, but even if they had, this country provides little opportunity. Even the legendary bush tucker man is struggling to find anything suitable to eat here.
Right. This is one of the very few bush tuckers I've seen around the place here, and it's a thing called cockle-spurna. It's one of the Australian native kapok species. And you can actually eat the little flower petals here. It's actually got quite a nice flavour. A bit flowery, if you'd excuse the pun.
But it's not enough to keep you alive. One man stands out in the group of survivors. Grady Gaston. He seized every opportunity to improve their chances of survival.
One of the things that Gaston kept doing that was really good was making marks, breaking branches, and leaving other sign that searchers might come across that could point them in their direction.
In fact, a search was already underway, but for weeks, every step they'd taken was away from rescue. They lived off scavenged fish and meat eaten raw.
People have wondered why the crew didn't use the old Boy Scout trick of rubbing sticks together to make fire. Well, even if they'd known how to do that, which they didn't, they'd have had to do it almost as soon as they hit the ground, because you very quickly run out of carbohydrate, and with it, the energy to make fire that way. Even local Aboriginals, who could make fire that way, still carried burning embers with them when they moved camp.
You've got to remember how limited their options were. Their plane was completely destroyed. The land offered virtually nothing. After almost a month, they began to die.
Starvation has an interesting effect on people. One of the things it does is it increases people's susceptibility to thoughts of defeat, of giving up. In a real sense, you've got to make your psychology work for you. If you think of it like a balance sheet, everything that you do well counts as credit and keeps you in the black. But small obstacles that upset you can really tip the balance against you. And of course, as these men got closer to the edge of starvation, that effect became more and more pronounced.
After nearly 2.5 months, Gaston was the only one left. Fate rewarded him when he stumbled across an Aboriginal spear.
Here is a man who's already determined that he's going to survive. He's going to have a girlfriend and buy a car. And all of a sudden, he finds the tool that may make that possible. I think the psychological boost that gave him is far greater than is often imagined.
On the 22nd of April 1943, an incredible 141 days after he'd crashed, Gaston was rescued by an Aboriginal stockman, drawing to an end one of the longest survival stories on record.
You know, the crew of this plane were brave men even before it crashed. But it's rather sad being here because 6 men made it onto the ground and only 3 made it out alive. Today, aircrew are much better equipped and better trained and far better supported in terms of rescue and pickup. But you know, situations like this can still happen. And in those circumstances, ultimately, it all comes down to one thing: the will to survive.
We've reached the end of our journey. It's been quite a trip, getting on for 1,000 miles across Queensland in the company of a man I feel I've known for years. Les is one of the few people I've ever met who really understands the connection between the landscape and the way we live. It's been fabulous working with someone so open to other ways of doing things.
Well, Les, I guess this will be our last breakfast on the trail together.
Yeah, I reckon you're heading in one direction, I've got to go in the other. Yeah, but it's been good fun. Yeah, really enjoyable.
I've really enjoyed it. But it's been, what I've particularly enjoyed is getting this sort of personal view of Queensland from you, because this is your backyard in a way. I was thinking last night about all the places we've been together here. We're just to scratch the surface of Queensland, obviously. But I think Little Eva is going to stick in my mind for a very long while. Because in a way, you know, what happened to that crew, in many ways, validates the work that you did when you were in the army.
Yeah, it does. And it was, you know, things like that that actually made me sort of spur on in those directions, because I can remember flying over that exact country we've just been to, where Little Eva crashed, in Army helicopter days. I remember flying over there and thinking, what if? How would I get on if something happened here and I had to, you know, we had to ditch down here sort of thing. And that really spurred me on to start looking at vegetation, that sort of thing. But at the same time I was reading, you know, books like, stories like Little Eva's story, but also the explorers like Kennedy and Leichhardt and that sort of thing. And they all came up with the same sort of question, you know, we haven't come to grips with this landscape yet. And that's what really, you know, encouraged me to get out there and start doing it.
What do you think the future holds then, in terms of bush tucker and Australia?
Look, it's really interesting, because the word tucker had almost died out of use in the Australian vocab before we came along, what was it now, getting towards 20 years ago, and created a new series called Bush Tucker Man, which was a bit of it wasn't meant to sort of kick off the way it was, but it really went, and it brought that word back into play. But it's also done something else. I think it's brought an interest in the landscape that wasn't there before, and people sort of think, hey, yeah, that's interesting, you can eat that thing that I remember seeing one of those once upon a time, you know, or whatever it was. And Australians today, I think, are much more embracing of their landscape, and I think they will be in the future too. And Australians are much more educated about their landscape and the vegetation and what it's got to offer. And I think we're seeing that all the time, the way they now respect their landscape a lot better than they did perhaps 50 years ago.
Well, Les, it's been a real pleasure. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, mate. It's been great working with you. Maybe we'll do it again one day.
That'd be good.
Cheers.